Do complex legal issues hold you back? Let's get energized and bring clarity to your top legal questions. This is Law Talk with the Flock by Goosmann Law Firm.
Hello, I'm your host, Jeana Goosmann, CEO, lawyer, author, and woman business owner, here to help navigate you through the law, your business, and life as a leader. And for today's episode with Law Talk with the Flock, I'm excited to have with me Jeremy Brown. Jeremy is the CEO and publisher of Throne Publishing Group. Jeremy, welcome to the podcast.
Jeana, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here. When I got an email about this, I was just fired up. I can't wait to talk about this book. I'm just going to bring it out right in the first 30 seconds, but I'm just so excited to be here, Jeana. Thank you.
Outstanding. And you and you brought up my book. We worked together and you were my publisher for my book and really helped guide me through the process. And last year we published Worth It, Business Leaders Ready, Execute, Deliver. And I got to work with you through that. And I'm frequently asked, who was my publisher and how did the process go? And so I was really excited to have you on today in order to talk about just that.
Oh, thank you so much. Can I share like my favorite part of this book, Jeana? I talk about it like all the time.
Absolutely. Go for it.
Okay, so this is my favorite part. And so so many people, myself included, we say, here's the content I want to write about. And we just want to hammer home our value, our expertise. And that's absolutely it. That's why the goods we can deliver. It's why people work with us, all that. And there's a both and there's parts of our story that as we can communicate our narrative, it can make those points and that content land super well. And so my favorite part, and I remember this in the interview, Jeana, was the big deal boot story. And when you wanted to talk about doing big deals in the legal world, because you guys do big deals at Goosmann, and you were like, I want the strategy behind it, how we do them. And so we were going to talk about that. And then you shared the story of your dad going, in the mornings and help me here a little bit. But in the mornings, he'd be like, Jeana, sit on daddy's lap. He'd sit you on his lap and he'd say, daddy's going to put on his big deal boots today. And that meant he was going to go do a big deal somewhere in his businesses, all the entrepreneurial things he had going on. And that's where that was the story you used to communicate how to do big deals in real estate. It's like my favorite thing in the whole book. And everybody remembers it, right?
Absolutely. No, and I remember my dad's big deal boots too. I mean, he's got the black alligator ones and the brown snake ones. And when dad was wearing those, you knew that there was something really big going on that day.
That is so cool. I love that story.
Yeah, and we do that still today, right? Everybody suits up. You put on your best clothes for when you're going to go out and you want to be your most confident self and you're going to rock the day and have those big deals happen.
Totally makes a difference.
And you remembered that all the way through. So when we did the Be Worth It conference last year to launch the book, you actually told me, it's like, do you have those big deal boots? And I did. And I got those boots from my dad's closet and I still have them with me today. And if I go up on stage, you might see those boots.
That's so cool. I remember, here's the thing. This is why it stuck with me for so long, because I remember the slide, the big deal boot slide. There was a picture of your dad. I was like, here's an example of somebody owning their story, using their voice, making an impact. It's you have all the expertise, you have all the things everybody wants from you anyways, and your whole team, like you guys have the goods, and you're bold enough and confident enough to bring your story into it. So it's like, we know you, we can connect with you. And I just remember it was like you just owning and using your voice on stage. I was so happy, so proud. I still remember it to this day. So good.
Well, thanks, Jeremy. You're definitely a great cheerleader when it comes to all those things. And this is your area. And can you tell everybody about your business, Jeremy, and the name of it, and help us get started with who you are?
Yeah, thank you, Jeana. So we own, my wife and I, we run two businesses here in Sioux Falls. We run them out of Sioux Falls. We operate in just about every state in a couple different countries right now at the moment. But we have Throne Publishing Group, and that's where we help. You said it best, Jeana. We publish the doers. And we find people just like you who are super successful. Some people, there's a couple coming from Memphis to Sioux Falls today. And what we do is we help them. We created a process where they talk their book out. We publish it, and then they get their book done and make things happen with it. And then what we did that we really ramped up during COVID was we had this certification program where if there's a writer, an editor, a designer, talent who are saying, hey, I would love to help people publish books, we made a certification program for that. And so now that's called Storyway. And there's 50 people in a little over 30 states right now who are certified through us. And so we're super excited about that. And here's what we fundamentally do is we help people own their story, understand it, and publish books that not only tell their story, but land with their audience, share their expertise. And it's like, I feel like it's spiritual formation, it's personal development, it's authority marketing, all rolled up into one big process here that we get to do for people.
Outstanding. And having gone through the process, I would say it is exactly all those things. And I remember when we first met and I went through your Awaken process, we essentially ended that day with, Jeana, you have about 10 books in you. So we need to start with the first book.
That's right. To get you in the game. And you do. You and your whole team have this should be like the Goosmann Library, literally, because you guys are the thought leaders and your vision, you're already crushing it right now, but your vision is so big and you guys are the thought leaders in the space you're in. Like you just own the space. And that's what a lot would help, what books help people do is just establish their authority and command that authority in the marketplace. So again, I remember, Jeana, we were out at the Zeal, the Center for Entrepreneurship in Sioux Falls. We had like a full day and we were done by like 6:30 at night. Like we just kept going and rolling with you. And you had so many books, and that's where a lot of authors get stuck is there's so much. Where do I begin? How do I even get started? Like there's a couple coming in here today. They're going to be here a day and a half from Memphis, and they own a big personal injury law firm from way down in Memphis. They're coming up here, but they really are wanting to tell their story because they grew up in really, really, really tough situations. And so I don't know how, but we'll pull out of their narrative and apply it to what they're doing today so people can not only, just like you, not only know your expertise, but know you. People want to know you, right?
Jeremy, you're so passionate about what you do. And what is it that's so rewarding about your profession and what drives you?
Well, like you mentioned this thing called Awaken, and I always tell people, I'm like, it's such a horrible name. It's so generic, and there's so many things out there called like Awaken this or Awaken that. But literally, Jeana, I did the first one, and I said, you know what? I think if I sat down with somebody for a day, we could get their whole book outline done that very day, because it was a process that took a long time. We always say an outline well done is a book half written, and it really is true. But I was like, let's take this 2-month thing. Let's get it done in a day. And I think we could do it. I tested it out. And Jeana, I remember this guy going through it. And he's telling me his story, all this crazy stuff happened in his life. Like every entrepreneur, we see the craziest things. You saw some crazy stuff, amazing things that we talk about in the book. But it was at noon and we were eating lunch and we come back from the lunch break and he goes, Jeremy, do you even want to like work with me anymore? Like, is there anything even here? And I remember thinking, dude, I was so excited about the afternoon. And as we started to do, like what we do with you is we started to connect the dots. This part of your life actually is why you're so passionate about this here. And going back and forth like that and connecting the dots. And it was like you can literally see light bulbs going off in people. And it's not just about their book. I don't see this as about books. I see it as owning your story, knowing your story. If you know who you are, you know what you're called to do, what you're supposed to do. You know you can see the vision in the future. You can pass that on to future generations in your family. So that's why I love what we do so much. It's a hard, crazy business. It took us years to develop these processes that we can now like really contain this creative process into. But I just love it. And now, in working with Goosmann Law, we're clients of you guys, setting ourselves up for future success, setting our people up for success. That's what really gets me fired up. I'll tell you one quick story, if I may, right?
Absolutely.
This
Go
is
for
another
it.
reason, Jeana. So I was always super close with my grandma. My grandma and my grandpa were like my grandparents, like second parents to me. My grandpa died when I was like 16. He's this huge entrepreneur, philanthropist all over the world. And my grandma was in hospice. And I got a call one night, like, if you want to talk to grandma, you better get back here, right? So I hightailed back there, and I had a moment with my grandma alone with her in the place she passed away with in, and like I got to receive a final outpouring of her from me. And I'm sitting there with her, she's laying in bed, and I just mustered up the courage to say, Grandma, here are all the things I am thankful for. Because I was like, this is it. I better do this. And it still took me to be like, I need to say this. So I thanked her for everything. I thanked for all the things she'd ever done and just emphatically thanked her. And then she came right back to me and she said, Jeremy, you need to keep doing what you're doing. You are just like your grandpa, even you, right down to how you walk. You are just like him. You need to keep doing it all. You have all of his character traits, all these things. And she kept saying thank you over and over and over again, Jeana. And I didn't know why, because I didn't feel like she was telling it to me. But I was like, okay. So I felt commissioned that night. One of the best nights of my life. I felt commissioned. And then she passed away. A couple days later, we're at the funeral, and I see these 3-ring binders. They're like an inch thick. And in those binders were thank you notes from churches, hospitals, orphanages, missionaries all over the world. My grandma and grandpa had funded over the years and never told anybody. I didn't know about them. And it was one of 3 binders. And I really felt like that night she was like, generosity is what you're called to do. This entrepreneur thing is what you're supposed to be doing. Stop doubting yourself and wasting time worrying and doubting and just totally go for it. And so that happened in 2015. And that's when I was like, all right, me and my wife got together and was like, we got to do this thing. It's time to roll. And I think 2021 is really going to be a breakout year for us. Just like so many businesses right now, where time is a little wild, but so many opportunities are going to come out of what we're seeing right now in the market. So that's where I kind of get this heart of, I have a lot of urgency for people. And everybody we talk about, it's like, we got to know our stories. We got to share them. We got to pass on the identity. You're doing that to your kids. Like, I think about your kids reading this at some point. They probably already have a lot, and just like more and more. It's amazing. Just that. And you get to make a bunch of money from this thing. But just that legacy piece, it's like your kids are going to know. They're going to have their big deal boots. Like, how cool is that? It's amazing.
It's so much fun. And Jeremy, the other thing I know you bring to that process is I'll never forget just talking to you. You were interviewing me, and I was telling you about, well, I negotiate these big deals, and you're like, well, how do you do that? And I was talking about some of the things I do when I negotiate, and you're like, Jeana, this is gold. And for me, it's just stuff I do every day, and it's just part of how I work and the cases I run. And you're like, no, this is unique. And you forget when you have something that you've developed over time that it is unique to you, and you kind of get this mindset over time that, well, everybody knows this stuff, and it really isn't true. And so you bring that new fresh lens to the equation, which is oh so helpful.
That's so great. And those things you mentioned, Jeana, we call those street lessons and street skills. They're the lessons you learn in the streets. No man or woman has taught you. You didn't read it from a book or a weekend event. You learned it from being in the business and seeing the stuff you saw. And the street skills is the skill set you naturally evolved and you earned and you paid for and you invested in yourself over the years. And it's like, you get those. And the process we use is called burn. And so, like, what we do with you is, if you throw a bunch of materials into a fire, only the things of lasting value withstand the flames. You have diamonds, gold, and steel. So you do that with your story, and you can continuously do this with even you and your team, and you will burn your experiences, your story, and you'll find the diamonds that'll display beauty, the steel that'll give strength, and the gold that'll give value to other people. And that's why we need community and we need each other, for the very reason you just said, Jeana, of, hey, you don't see this in you because it's natural. It's like breathing to you. And we tend to devalue a little bit the things that are natural to us. But man, it was so good. And I was so happy to see you doing all the workshops. I mean, you started the Be Worth It LLC, right? You started a whole other company, and it's totally worth it. Like, it's worthy of that kind of investment. They're that good. And you're the thought leader nationally.
Jeremy, what do you do? How does somebody get started? So if they have a book in them, and I'm talking to a CEO or somebody listening right now, how do they get going on this journey?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I think the first thing that they need to do is really square up with, who is my audience and what is truly challenging them right now. So empathy, bringing empathy into the process of what's going on with them right now, and like right now. So we help people figure out their audience right down to not just what are their problems, but what are the words they use to describe their problem. And then what I would say, once you do that, you know your audience, you know their problems, then it's time to forget all that for a second. And you go back to and you focus on what has been my journey. Because all the concepts you want to communicate, the seeds of them were planted in your life, usually very early. Like you had the big deal boots phases. You had a couple stories we put in this book that were really juicy. The things that we're most passionate about come from the experiences of our lives already. So we know, like, to be a leader, to really lead people, because authors are leaders, truly. To lead well, we have to have a lot of self awareness. And so the question I ask people and that I challenge myself with is, if I don't know my story, how can I really know who I am? How can I have that self awareness? So, by processing your personal narrative first, no matter what book you're doing, it doesn't have to contain, like, I have this book right back here, this Get It Done book. Haven't sold a single copy. It's nowhere on Amazon, but it's generated seven figures for our business with the strategies we use. But I don't have, or I started here with that book. And where you go is, before you get into what you want to communicate, you analyze your narrative first, because it's all the seeds are there. And if you're communicating your personal narrative to prove a point, it lands with people. We call that communicating with power. Communicating with power creates action. So you are the leader, you know your narrative, you know your story, and you can own it just like you're doing with Worth It.
Now, Jeremy, how does someone get to work with you?
Okay, working with me is as simple as sending me an email, or you can go to our website. We're all over on Google. You can find us on LinkedIn. And how I always start is with a cup of coffee and a conversation. And what I do is I always say my role is to make sure if we're the perfect fit, we get a deal done. And if we're not the perfect fit, we find you the perfect fit. Because all authors, there's all kinds of publishing opportunities out there, publishing models that are out there. So we have a really niche model with people just like yourself, Jeana. That's really our home run kind of an author. So that's what we do: coffee, conversation, and we start to strategize in that conversation.
Outstanding. And share with the listeners what your website is, will you, Jeremy?
Thank you, Jeana. It's thronepg.com. So like throne, like a king sits on a throne, P as in publishing, G as in group.com.
Outstanding. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Jeremy, for sharing your insight with everyone today. Go make it worth it.
That's right. And I want to say this too, like, go get this book, truly. Like, just if you want to see somebody wielding their expertise and their narrative, like, this book is it. And look, Jeana could have published a book like 4 times this size. It's easy. Mark Twain said, if I had more time, the letter would be shorter. So this is a book you can get through in 2 hours, and you can do some damage. Like, you could be dangerous with this book because of what Jeana puts in there, and you get to hear some great stories from her life. She get to connect with you on a level. So I say go to Amazon too, get this book. It's totally worth it. Have to say it.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I appreciated, one of my goals was to become an Amazon bestseller, and you helped me do that on launch day. So you
Yeah.
definitely know how to accomplish those big goals. And that also was worth it. And that really is what became the name of the book, because that's how I gauge, should we do this? Should we not? And it just comes full circle back to that, doesn't it?
That's right. And it's so good. It's like the mantra of Goosmann Law, right? It's worth it.
That's the goal. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for Law Talk with the Flock by Goosmann Law Firm. We hope you feel energized and ready to soar past your goals. Become a Flock fan and subscribe to our podcast for weekly episodes. Learn more at goosmannlaw.com.